Okay, welcome, Katie. Thanks for coming on.
Hi,
Uh,
Ash. Thanks for having me.
yeah, it's been a while. Gosh, like I don't know, I haven't seen you for probably over 10 years, maybe.
Oh,
But
really? I like feel like I talk to you every so
yeah,
often.
but I think, yeah, I mean, I think the last time I probably seen you was maybe when I was in junior college. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
probably.
been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I see you in pictures and stuff, but I haven't like seen you face to face in a long time. So, um, yeah, so Katie and I played travel softball together my eighth grade and freshman year. I think eighth grade, freshman year. Same travel
Eighth
team.
grade? Eighth grade?
No, no, you're right. You're right. Freshman, sophomore year, because
Okay.
yep, freshman,
It's
sophomore.
making me feel real old, but
No, so Katie
I
was
was a senior when Ashley was a freshman. So
yeah. Played on the same organization, but never on the same travel team, and then played against each other in high school, your senior year, and then came back for college, correct?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
when that was allowed.
yeah, not allowed anymore. And then I forget how we started coaching together. I can't remember if if I ended up going
And did
back.
you approach the like organization and say, "Hey, I'm around to coach"?
Yeah, yeah, I
Because
can't remember who came to who first.
well, I had been coaching as an assistant coach in the organization
Yep.
for multiple years, for
Yeah.
multiple seasons.
Yeah.
And they had this 10U team that they didn't have a coach for. And they were like, "Hey, O'Brien, you've been doing this for a while. Like, you want to take over?" And I'm like, um, "I'm going to be a senior in college this year. How am
Yeah.
I going to do this?"
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
remember
super
you,
local.
yeah, you were away for like the winter portions, but then God bless Chris Shrimp because he was
Yes,
out.
yes.
But yeah, we had a little powerhouse 10U team in 2010.
And
With
he's a phenomenal coach,
yeah,
multiple state championships in football, and
yeah, he's
now hopefully becoming the athletic director at PR. So,
yeah,
yeah,
he's fantastic. I think PR really they let they had a huge hole when they lost him, but if he's going to be the athletic director, then
yeah,
I
he just resigned this
okay.
after the season. So they haven't had a season without him yet.
Yeah, this coming up one maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. So, okay, so um obviously I know the background of your playing career, but maybe just talk a little bit about travel teams, high school teams, maybe some options that you had as a collegiate athlete, why you chose the college that you chose, what that would look like or what that looked like.
Yeah, so I I'm the oldest of three kids, and in our family, travel wasn't an option for money, um, for a lot of reasons because there's two drivers and three kids for, just a bunch of reasons. So I did not start my travel career until I aged out of rec ball, actually.
Okay.
So my first year in travel was my sophomore year of high school.
Okay.
And I know that that's unheard of today, but
Yeah.
I still believe that if, the right coach wants to find you, they will. So I don't, if money is an issue for families, I don't think that should deter anybody.
Absolutely.
Um, and so started travel. I think I played 1 year at 16U. Yeah, I think I played 1 year at 16U and then three at 18U.
Okay.
So I had always played up, if you will.
Yeah.
Rec is not what it is now. I was like in sixth grade playing with high schoolers because the age groups were like 4 years was this age group and 4 years was the other one. And I think I was in middle school and my neighbor down the street, they needed somebody to play up on her team
Yeah.
and then the mom was like, "Oh yeah, so Dana's just gonna drive him to the game." And my mom's like, "I'm sorry, my middle schooler is going to get in the car with your 16-year-old." and so that just like I think I might have even been like fifth grade actually. Now that I say that, I'm like, I think I was like really young, and my mom was like, what's
Yeah.
happening?" But I just kind of aged out of that, and then my parents were like, "Okay, what now?" So someone down the street from us was coaching a travel team. And
Okay.
so Tom Green was my coach for 3 years of travel, and I just moved up when they did. So most of my team was older, so that's why I played 18Us when I could have played 16U for another season. I think now a lot of girls try to stay down. At least that's from the coaching perspective. That's what I'm hearing, is that they try to play as young as they can for as long as they can. But I think it made me a better player to
Mhm.
play at that 18U level sooner.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I was only ever with the tidal waves that are now the Crush tidal waves, or CTW, depending on, where you are. But that experience was a lot of fun. I had never felt like I was full of softball. Like, obviously I only played a couple times a week in rec. And so tournaments was this like new and exciting thing. And I made friends on the team. And so when my parents did need to send us off with someone, the neighbor down the street was the head coach. My parents were like, okay, I guess, we've known them for forever. You can go with them. And so that just made things a little easier for my parents. They'd pack up a cooler and send me on my way for the weekend. But it was a whole new ball game, and literally, and just like playing at a much more competitive level I knew I wanted to keep going for college. And so after let's see, it would have been one season of travel, I think. Yeah, because it was my junior year of high school. I'd played volleyball as well in high school, and one of my close friends from the team, I was a sophomore, she was a senior, and she went to play volleyball at Wright State University in Ohio. And I was like, Dad, let's go watch Tara play some volleyball. Like, let's go. And he's like, we're not driving 6 hours for like 2 volleyball games. Like,
Yeah.
that's not happening. So it's going to be a college visit. So we go to Wright State. I look around and I'm like, I don't like this campus. Like, it's just like built, you stand in the middle and there's buildings, 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 and that's it.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well, let's look at Dayton. It's like 10, 15 minutes away. He used to say it was the sister school to his campus
Sure.
because they have the same mascot.
Okay.
Like, they're both the Flyers. He went to Lewis. My dad went to Lewis.
Okay.
I don't know if that's true. He's the only person who's ever told me that in my entire life. So we look at campus. I'm like, this is beautiful. I want to go here. And he's like, what about softball? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, let's figure out what that looks like. So they had a camp that summer, and it was a day camp though. So it was for like local kids, and
Yeah.
nobody came from out of state for this thing.
Wow.
So we like communicated with the coach, told her that I had a tournament in Michigan. And then my parents weren't going to it. I was like with other families. So
Yeah.
we were waiting on to drive back. So I flew out to Ohio, which really isn't that far, but
Yeah.
to make it for camp,
Yeah.
we flew out Monday morning for like a Monday through Thursday camp. And so I missed the morning. I meet coach. She introduces me to another local high school girl who's just a year younger than me. Fast forward, we end up being teammates. But and then by about Wednesday, I had really started impressing coach. I hit a home run off of her.
Okay.
And she was a pitcher at Dayton.
Okay.
And so that, like, context wise, like, she like could bring it. And
Yeah.
so she's like, only 2 other high school girls have ever done that, and they've both come and played for me. And I was like, I mean, I would love that. Like,
Yeah.
so we had a meeting after camp. It was like logistic wise, like, it was before she could commit to anything or like offer me anything. Like, there was your junior summer, there was like a time frame, and we hadn't gotten there yet. And so she's like, I can't give you any logistics at all.
Yeah.
But please, we want to have you back in the fall for an official visit. So I came back for that official visit my senior year, and the rest is history. That's the only place I applied to, only school I wanted to go to. And I signed my letter in November of my senior year. So
That's incredible.
it's nuts because I looked at other schools, and I like would go. My dad was huge into helping me because he set up meetings at every school we went to like just talk to the coach. Like,
Yeah.
hey, does your softball coach have 10 minutes to just tell us about your program and answer a couple questions for my daughter. So like we go to ISU, and ISU I thought was like high on my list. Like
Yeah.
it's a good teaching school and I want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So I sit down with the coach and she's like, "Oh, you're a math major. You're going to have to go to school for 5 years because I don't let my players student teach in season, and math only student teaches in the spring." And I was like, we walked out of that meeting and I went, "Dad, I don't want to go to ICU." Like,
Yeah.
I go, "I don't care. I don't want to go here," because I wanted 4 years. That's what I knew what I was looking for. A
Right.
school I could go to, finish in 4 years. And that's what Dayton was promising. I had, when I was a freshman, there was a senior on the team at Dayton who was student teaching during season,
Yeah.
and she was doing it and figuring it out. She had to miss a week of student teaching for our spring break because it didn't match up.
Right.
But then all that meant is she student taught a week longer. That was it. And like, sometimes she'd be late to something because it's be the same as class schedules, right? Like we would have, if you had class, it was okay if you missed something.
Yeah.
And she was teaching, so it was okay. And those same rules applied. So, she just had like early morning workouts, like without people sometimes, or she had later ones after school was out. So they were just super flexible there, and it was awesome.
That's pretty incredible because you don't find like a lot of programs with student athletes who want specialty majors, whether it be teaching, nursing, etc. There's not a lot of programs at that level that allow that. So the fact that you found that, like that's pretty incredible, because I think you probably knew, amongst other things, quickly that you wanted to be there. But was there anything else that like drew you to Dayton?
Well, for me, like I guess I didn't realize it at the time because this was one of the many questions that I asked coaches. And so again, talking to the ISU, I just remember that one specifically because in my head it was like Dayton and ISU. And then it turned into like not ISU, which is also a good thing if you like have too many schools and you can like cross them off. And I think that's why I ended up only applying to one school, is because I crossed all the other schools off along the way. But I asked about church. So growing up, I went to church every Sunday, and it was mandated. And then by my parents, I think I could count on one hand the time we'd missed as a family. And so like for me, at first, I didn't think that would be a big deal, but then my junior and senior year of high school, my faith really started becoming important to me, and it was a priority. And I was very Catholic going into college, and I left not a Catholic, which if we get to that, cool. If we don't, not a big deal. But just know that like, so Dayton is a Catholic university, and that ended up being very important to me. The proximity of just like a multitude of services. So if you and there was like another church that wasn't Dayton, right, step off campus. So if I wanted to go in the morning, I could go there. Dayton caters to their students, and they have like Sunday evening, like late, even like a 9 o'clock mass. 9 p.m. mass on campus. So the way that the Dayton coach had approached it was like, you're when you're free, you can do whatever you want. So if we get back from traveling and you go to 9 p.m. mass on Sunday, that's fine with like, there's so many offerings. It would probably be hard for you, like if you didn't miss it, you know what I mean? Like, she's like, when you're traveling, I can't really control that. So I'm sorry she apologized for that and just said like, you're just going to need to be flexible with that. And, she's going to promise a lot of things, or whoever your coach is. And so at the end of my freshman year, I realized I really didn't get a chance to go while we were traveling, but I had the opportunity to go a billion other times, that if I wanted to, actually started going my sophomore year to like daily mass. Because I was missing Sundays. So then I was like, well, this is how I'll make up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I know like you and I have talked for years just about like your involvement with FCA or AIA. If you want to kind of talk maybe a little bit about how you got involved in that as an athlete, and then maybe you can even piece together, like you were saying, you started as a very devoted Catholic and then transitioned to what was it again? What?
I just say non-Catholic. I would say non-denominational.
Yep.
I'm not a denomination.
Okay.
Uh, so for me, like my story starts like my freshman year, really eighth grade. I had very severe depression.
Sure.
Was even suicidal. Like, well, I mean, at this point, like that's not even on my radar. So I can talk about it, and I'm willing to
Right.
talk about it. I think there's less of a stigma
Mhm.
with mental health
Absolutely.
than there was when I was in eighth and ninth grade. Like my parents wanted to hide it from other people. But so anyway, like I started travel after like kind of my lowest point. And I reached a point where I had a friend sophomore year of high school who would ask me all the time, "Hey, you want to go to FCA this week?" And FCA, for if somebody doesn't know, is Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Mhm.
We had a group at my high school, probably since I was in eighth grade.
Okay.
I think is the year it started. So it was already like well established for the first couple of years when I finally started going.
Sure.
I didn't. I think my friend asked me every single meeting sophomore year, and
Yeah.
I never went. I was like, that's not for me. I really struggled with like the idea. I was still going to church because I had to in my family, but I was struggling with like, why would God have me feel this way? And like if I don't want to live anymore, then what's the point? Sort of thoughts. Um, so like being able to go to this FCA, even though it was like friends of mine's, I was like, yeah, that's not for me. I don't need to go to this. So the summer after my sophomore year, when I started travel ball, I'm at a tournament with a friend. We're like, I, we'd hit it off. I would call her my best friend through high school now.
Yeah.
And she and I were talking, and I was like, she doesn't know about any of this stuff from eighth grade freshman year. I'm going to tell her about it. So
Mhm.
I do. And Ash, I don't have any way to describe it other than like God used that moment and like whispered to say, like, every other person I'd ever told this to would like run in the other direction. This is too heavy for me. This
Yeah.
is like too much. And we kind of stopped being friends or just like grew apart.
Mhm.
And she just like came at me with love in a way that was all I could kind of understand was like, maybe this is how God loves you.
Right.
And that, so that question I guess I had was like, I need to learn more about this.
Mhm.
Sent me to FCA my junior year. Like when they started, I was like, I don't know where else to learn about this. I'm done with like religions ed classes.
Right.
I like made my confirmation because that's a box that I checked as a Catholic,
Mhm.
but I don't know where I can go to learn about God anymore. And
Mhm.
so they started it. Our football coach was who ran it. And so they usually started like in October, like when the season's like not at the beginning of the season, but like when things were starting to die down a little bit for him. Um, and so I went to every meeting junior year. I learned so much about like just that I don't have to earn my way to heaven, like just that, you know, that getting to heaven isn't a bunch of check boxes to do with that God loves you no matter what. And all of those pieces that I think I'd heard, but it didn't seem real or understand it in a tangible way that applied to my life. It was just like this in this old book that that I
Yeah.
didn't really know or something. And so then at the end of junior year, they asked if anyone wanted to be a leader for the following year.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, so I basically like wrote up my testimony as best as I could, turned it in to the leaders, and I said, here's why I want to be a leader. And then it actually wasn't until I became a leader. I'm sitting in a leader meeting, and doing we actually just watched a video, and the video compared like how much a parent loves you to how much God loves you.
Mhm.
And like there's this question in the video, or not, I guess, statement in the video that says, there's nothing you could ever do that could make God love you less.
Mhm.
And I think that statement kind of like solidified and showed me how much God loves me, and that all of the bad thoughts and negative feelings towards myself and depression and like just all of that didn't matter to God, and that God loved me, and that was all that mattered. And there's nothing I could do, nothing in my past, nothing in my future, that God was just going to love me no matter what. And that like made all the difference for me. And so I like go up to my leaders and I tell them this, that like that video had such an impact on me. And so the football coach is like, okay, come see me tomorrow at school. Like I got something for you. And he just gives me a copy of the video that we had just watched.
Oh,
And so now I can't tell you how many times I have used that same video in FCA lessons now as an adult who is leading FCA,
yeah.
because of how it changed my life. And so whether it has the same impact on kids or not, I get to use it as an avenue to talk about how it's impacted my life and help me. So that's sort of how I got into FCA. Then I went on to college. And a teammate of mine was like, hey, does anybody want to go to Athletes in Action? And I go, what's that? And she's like, well, it's like FCA. Your high school had that. And I go, oh, I'm in.
Yeah.
So I literally don't think I missed a meeting all 4 years of college. Maybe if we were traveling or something, but I went my first meeting my freshman year, and I went every week. And it was funny enough, it was the same night of the week. Like
Okay.
FCA was Mondays in high school, and it was Mondays in college.
Yeah. That's
So that go
that's
ahead.
pretty incredible. I mean, I have to say like to your point earlier when you're talking about like you were thinking all these bad things that traditionally would be sinful, right? And I feel like there's this common misconception that if you think those things, you make poor decisions, you don't live by the word of God, that like you said, you don't have a one-way ticket to heaven. And I think that maybe, and I could be wrong, I feel like a lot of people are very distant to religion because of that, right? They feel like it's more of like a um I have to live this very superior life in order to be a devout Christian or Catholic or Lutheran or whatever. And it's not that at all. And I feel like that's oftentimes a lot of why people shy away from really giving themselves to um, any religion that they want to practice wholly, right? And they only utilize it in a way where um, they ask for things, not for guidance, or um, they're only really leaning in when things are going poorly instead of when things are going good. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
yeah, I think like and like by no means like I just think it's a like I'm very obviously sorry that you had to go through that, but I think it just shows now like with the amount of um I would say like mental health, like in a mental health crisis by way of either social media, cyberbullying, body dysmorphia, you name it. It shows people that there is a way out of all of that, right? If you really lean into something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I truly believe that like my entire path for finding Dayton was like totally a God thing. Like he knew what he was doing. And because even like, so here's the crazy thing. Like, so I don't know how much we've talked about this, but my sophomore year I got injured, so I couldn't play anymore. Um, or at least my coach thought I couldn't play anymore. That's probably a better way to put it. And I had seen tons of doctors, tons of like different specialists, and no one seemed to have a fix. The one thing they didn't send me to was a chiropractor, for whatever reason. And even to the point where my physical therapist, who was like being paid for by Dayton, was like, go home and see a chiropractor. They're like, they won't let us send you to one, but
Yeah.
go see one. And essentially I'd popped my rib out, and it was popped out for, I think it was like 6 to 8 months. And so I was in like constant pain every day. Chiropractor popped it right back in, and I could play again. But between my freshman and sophomore year, I had changed coaches. This new coach only saw me as this liability, as someone who got hurt all the time. And so like things changed there. But the unique thing for me is that then my junior and senior year were freed up a little bit more. And Athletes in Action, we still had, because we were a university club, we had to have a president. And so they had me be president for junior and senior year because I had the ability to do it.
Yeah.
You usually don't have a 2-year term, let alone your junior year. Usually be like senior and fifth year. And then what was really special was Dayton is like 25 minutes from the world headquarters of Athletes in Action.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And so I and my class schedule, because we had something called like a practical, which was like your practical, like a clinical. You do like student teaching the whole year essentially.
Okay.
But you go like the first week of school, then you go for like 5 weeks between fall break and Thanksgiving, and then you start day one in January, like teaching. So
Okay.
usually you like learn about the classroom and stuff right at the beginning, and then you eventually take over. But in Dayton, they like do this whole, which again, I loved the student
Right.
teaching set up there, because I wanted to teach as much as possible.
Right.
But because of this, in the like before I started my practicum and after, I only had class on Wednesdays.
Okay.
Like, so Mondays and Fridays were free, and Mondays was new staff training at Athletes in Action headquarters.
Okay.
So I went to Xenia for 4-hour trainings for like, I still have my binder from it. Like I had very specific like training that would have come to someone who was going to work for Athletes in Action. And by my senior year, I thought that's what I wanted to do. I was going to finish and get my degree, but I also was like, I'm going to go work for Athletes in Action. Now, my parents didn't love that, and that kind of raised some challenges that sent me back to teaching. But I also think I kind of have the best of both worlds now, with FCA, leading FCA and teaching. So I kind of get to do all the things that I'm supposed to do. But
yeah.
But yeah, that's a like very unique, and I truly believe that like, I don't want to say I was injured because of it, but that opportunity would have never happened had I been healthy and playing, and it just wouldn't have been possible in my day. Because what athlete has 4 hours to go 25 minutes away and
Nobody.
classes? So
Nobody.
So yeah, so that was really unique and special. And it allowed me to meet a lot of different people because it was so close. Like Dayton was kind of like a training campus for people who wanted to work for Athletes in Action. So each year I kind of had a new mentor from Athletes in Action to meet with on one-on-one. Athletes in Action's big focus is discipleship. And so investing and building relationships. I'm still very close with all of my mentors in some capacity, whether, I mean, one lives in South Africa now, so I don't see her anymore, but, just, it's been a cool opportunity to have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look what you brought back, what now working at Jacobs, where you graduated, and were the head coach for softball for how many years?
8 seasons. So I was the head coach for 8 and coached there for 12.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I feel like it's awesome when people want to impact the community, but how great is it that you get to impact the community you grew up in? Because I think what better to, like, the ins and outs of what the community takes to, what the high school takes to, I'm sure that were administration that were there when you were there, when you came back, which kind of like leads me to my next question for, like when you when you got involved in FCA and AIA, and you kind of had decided, yeah, I'm going to go back and teach, um, would you say that, because obviously I think Jacobs obviously had FCA before, so it was kind of like an easy integration, but do you know what that would look like if they didn't? You know what I mean? Because I
Oh
know that
yeah.
there's a lot of high schools in our community that do what Jacobs does.
Yeah. So we're very unique and special in that way. And Dean and Di Schluter, who started Jacobs FCA with Bo and Gloria Bo Shears,
Mhm.
were very uniquely equipped to start that. Bo worked at a church, and Dean, his dad was a pastor, and he was our head football coach. So like the perfect combination of people that you want to like get this started, right? So the crazy thing is that we were, let's see, I know, so I can talk about two different things. One, or two other district schools are starting up FCA right now at Hampshire and Dundee Crown. And so this is their first year
Mhm.
having it. And so we've just connected just this year with our regional FCA director. And so
Okay.
he's been awesome with like supporting us. And then part of it's also like he feels like he kind of stumbled upon this gem of like, wait, how long have you had FCA? Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
So, and like learning what is good, what has worked for some of our schools in the past. So we did have a big obstacle, well, two big obstacles. I'm trying to think what year it was, but I want to say it was 2019.
Okay.
Uh, so we had an issue with a different Christian club at the high school.
Okay.
And essentially there was a lawsuit brought against the advisor.
Mhm.
And at the end of that school year, myself and our other FCA advisor were called into the office on the last day of school.
Mhm.
Um, met with our principal and a central office person who like passed this letter to me across the table and said, you must cease all affiliation and work that you're doing with FCA. Um, Basically, they were protecting themselves because of this lawsuit
Sure.
with this
Absolutely.
other teacher. And we were basically told, like, you cannot have a Jacobs FCA anymore. This needs to be student run. You can't be affiliated. Like, this needs to stop. So I thankfully went in first because there was years where the FCA leader. So I come back from college, the Schluters and the Boshiers, they're still running things.
Mhm.
Then Schluter retires, the Boshiers move. Like
Mhm.
I'm doing it by myself,
Mhm.
which was really tough for a few years. And then another teacher came in, Chris Keller, who is been phenomenal and a great pair to me as far as like I was praying for a male leader, like just like to balance some of those
Sure.
out. And so thankfully they called me in first. I walk out and I just like briefly tell him what's about to happen in like in like passing. I'm like, okay, here's what they just said to me. Here's what you need to say. Okay, bye. Like,
Yeah.
and just to make sure our stories were exactly the same. Because obviously I wanted to protect both of us and make sure that, we were safe and weren't going to lose our jobs. Because that other teacher did. And
Mhm.
so when that happened, we already had our leaders for the next year picked out,
Mhm.
but unfortunately they were good as a group and didn't really have like a strong individual because that one strong individual was the one who had to go to admin. We couldn't do it and say, "Hi, here's my petition to start FCA again with 20 names and these teachers will open the door, but they are not going to do anything with it and not talk to us about our faith or anything. They're just going to unlock the door and sit there." So we were able to start that by about January, unfortunately. It took so long. Normally we would start October, September, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Um, and so that brings us to the January of 2020 is when we finally got it started again.
Mhm.
And then maybe November, if it December, somewhere in there. But we only had like 2 or 3 meetings and then COVID shut us down. And it was like, okay, we'll see what's gonna happen. We'll see what's gonna happen. And nothing happened. And then those leaders graduated.
Mhm.
So the following year we were like, how do we do this? Like, and nothing was really running. 2021, like we were still masking at school. It was, you know, crazy. I remember that softball season being like, how am I going to have an indoor practice in a mask? Like, just like, I don't know if I can do this. I really struggled with my mental health, like being a head coach and trying to do what's best for my kids, but also take care of myself. And I know I made mistakes along the way, and some families like were unhappy with how I handled things, but I think that was just their way of like being upset that their kids lost their season. So it just, at the end of the day, like I know I was doing what my best. It just wasn't what their parents wanted. But in all of that, I like couldn't think about FCA. Like it was just like, well, like maybe it's good that things are going to end, because I was so stressed about these like parents complaining about softball that I was like, maybe it's good to have a break from FCA. Maybe it'll be okay. So then just last school year, and no, it would have been 2 school years ago. So if last year was 23 grads, so 22, the spring of 22, there was this junior who was like, hey, I want to get FCA started. I know you used to be in charge of it. I went as a freshman for like the 2 meetings.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, great. We can't start it. You can start it. So it was like kind of cool that this like random kid came out of the woodwork, and we're like, oh, you can start this. So he like told me and the other teacher for like weeks and months. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna get it going. I'm gonna get it going. But he's a 3-sport athlete. He was like student body president when he was a senior. Like this is like a very busy kid.
Yeah.
And so he finally got everything straightened out his senior year. So we restarted FCA. It was kind of a roundabout way, because like myself and the other teacher had been doing it for years. And then this third guy came in, and we were like, where did you come from? Like, like, wait, what? Like, we've been doing, like, I've literally been doing it, like leading as an adult leader since 2010. So I was like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, you don't get credit for this, man. Like, I did this by myself for years. Like, this is tough. You don't get to just like come in and take the glory. I'll tell you a side story when we're not recording about that. But so we got it started back up. We had this senior leader and then all junior leaders, which was great, because then we rolled right into this school year where the juniors are now seniors. And we've been trying to get back into our usual flow. So we meet every week, but it's like a huddle meeting with everybody, and then a leader meeting, and then a huddle meeting and a leader meeting.
Okay.
What's really worked for our FCA is that we meet at night after practices. A lot of high school FCAs try to meet in the morning before school, and you just can't get kids to come. And you don't get a lot done relationally, as well as like your teaching, your learning, your discussions, if you have like 20 to 30 minutes. So our meetings right now are an hour, but pre-COVID, they were an hour and a half.
Okay.
And I would love to move back to that next year, because we're starting to realize like, oh, we're going over every week. And I feel bad for the moms waiting outside for these kids at 8:30 at night. So I'm like, we need to start at 7. But that'll be a next year thing. We'll move that next year.
I mean, that's kind of awesome to know, I mean, obviously it's like really sad that you had to go through the challenges you did, but I mean, the kids that don't have it, like that kind of gives them a light at the end of the tunnel to be like, wow, like something that was established for a long time, got shut down, and they were still able to bring it back. So the appetite of even just starting something new, right? Even from scratch. I mean, something is nothing, right? It's not nothing. It's
that's how we're like as leaders, like myself and the other teacher who've been doing it for so long. We're like, sometimes we'd like leave a meeting and be like, well, at least we're having it. Like, like, we'd be like, it's not what it used to be, but that's okay. And we just need to remind ourselves that that we'll get where we need to be eventually. We've been afraid right now to do too much input because of the letter we got. But dare I say, like, our principal's gone. We have a new superintendent. We have a, you know, so we kind of feel like, okay, next year will be the time that we're going to start like towing the edge a little bit closer and sharing more of our thoughts and inputs. And
I think that's the only way kids like learn though. I mean, it's not like like I said, we kind of had discussed before, like it's not like you're like you want to join FCA, you want to join FCA, you want to join FCA, right? Like athletes are going to other athletes, or just students are going to other students to be a part of something that they don't understand. And how are they really supposed to understand it if there's really no teaching involved, right? People that have done it for the vain existence of time. I mean, it's just like in a classroom, right? It's the same concept. You're not like, hey, come to my trig class when they're not, you know what I mean? Like you're not.
Yeah. Well, like, so I teach another class that's not math. I don't know if you know about that one, but so we made vision boards first week of January, and then last week we shared them out. And two kids really said they had to share one thing on their vision board. And these two guys said, hey, I want to grow closer to God this year. That's all they said. They didn't elaborate on it at all. And then my boss for that class was actually in the room at the time. And then she just points to him and then points to me. And she's like, FCA, FCA, FCA.
Yeah,
she's like, you guys need to go to FCA.
Right.
So like, I'm not the one doing it. She is like, and she's my boss. So like,
but I feel like that's incredible. Cause like I said, like people have this idea that religion kind of hides in a closet, right? Like it's not something, and I love now, like the, what I've seen, like, kind of like I was telling you before we started, I had an athlete who didn't grow up religious and got involved in the church and the youth group communities because her friends had kind of involved herself or involved her in those things. I mean, she went through some struggles through COVID with family members passing, and I was able to see her and my other coaching staff were able to see her get baptized, and then later on her younger brother, the younger sister. I mean, now she's a leader within, like the youth group, and she actually stayed in town. I think ultimately she's doing great things. She stayed in town because she was so close to this church, right? And she's afraid that nothing is going to be like it. And I feel like when you have something like that, just kind of it gives you life. And I think FCA or AIA or even just small little unnamed communities that allow kids to express themselves in ways that they're uncomfortable doing is great. And FCA provides that for kids, like it's a small community of whether it be different religions, what have you, like everyone's just very welcoming by way of, yes, I believe in a higher power. I believe in a higher power, which brings me to misconceptions. I think that's like a good question. I think we've talked a little bit about the common misconceptions of religion. I always refer it to that slam poetry guy who's like, I believe in Jesus, but I don't believe in religion. Have you ever seen that?
I don't know if I've seen that one, but I do. I believe something like that. Like,
yeah,
organized religion is sometimes where people get into, gets messy because humans are involved, right? Like, and we're all imperfect. So that's sometimes the issue. So common misconceptions, I think for me, when people find out that I am like in charge of FCA, or that like growing up, going to church every Sunday was such an important part of my weekend, that people automatically have a stereotype of me or like who I am, or that everybody at FCA is going to be like total like right wing and very like don't swear, don't do anything bad, have never made a mistake, live a perfect life, and like none of that's true. Like I think you get all types of people. You get people who do have an upbringing of like, yes, they were raised in church, and then you get other kids who have never opened a Bible in their life, and aren't even sure what they believe, but their friend said, hey, come, this is fun, and we have a good discussion. Like, and so, and I try to remind our leaders of that. I think this year we're struggling with that because all of them have grown up in church, and so they are struggling for what would a kid who hasn't, what is their experience like? So for example, the senior that I had talked about that had started FCA back up, the first FCA meeting, he wanted to do Bible trivia. And I told him that was probably not a good idea because if you want
You want
all
to
of
be
your friends
inclusive. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, if you want all of your friends to come,
Yeah.
some of them haven't opened a Bible before. Like that's just plain and simple. Like statistically, like they just haven't. And he went to a Lutheran K-8 school, so that's why it was just trying to explain that to him. And so I was the kid who walked. It was like I didn't know like reading a Bible was something you did. I just thought they were like passages that were read on Sunday when I came to FCA for the first time. And I think my Bible was like a New King James or something, like old English, and like
Yeah.
I didn't understand what I was reading. I didn't know there were different versions of the Bible, and that like finding one that works for you that you can understand is like something that you should try to do, and all of these things. So I think some of the misconceptions are you have to have it all together.
Yeah.
Everybody's coming with their own baggage, everybody's coming with their own background, whether it's they've never stepped foot in a church before, or one of our kids who's going to be a leader next year, his family doesn't go to church. He found a Christian TikToker over COVID, and he started really liking the videos that he was seeing. And then he started following him, watching more of his videos and understanding more about God and how much he's loved. And that is why he started coming to FCA. Like, what a cool universe we live in, that TikTok was used to turn this kid into a Christian. Like that's so cool. And this kid is just like so excited about FCA every week and wanting to be there and like show up and have good discussions with kids. So just really excited to see how he grows in the next year as well.
I think like I feel like that was a lot of, like a lot of my teammates had apprehensions of essentially associating themselves with anything in religion. I mean, you look at like the overall dynamic of how people identify, how people identify who they love, who whatever, right? Like let's read between the lines. I think there's some serious misconceptions with, choosing to love somebody that you genuinely love doesn't allow you to essentially associate yourself with religion at all, right?
Yeah.
And I know that from, growing up in a traditional Lutheran church where it's not necessarily as frowned upon as like Roman Catholic, but like that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of, parents, let's say, right? Or even just peers, people that grew up in environments where it was communicated that those types of things are wrong and that you cannot believe, or you don't have any way, shape, or form you're not going to go to heaven, right? And that steered me away for a long time. I had like a period in which I was kind of like, why believe if God chooses who can come and who can't, right? And I was very misinformed. And I think the only way you become not misinformed, double negative, the only way the only way you become more informed is as really leaning into how you interpret, and I feel like it's how you interpret, right? How you interpret the way that God loves you, and how you interpret I want to say the Bible, right? And then that's not to say, obviously, like I said, religion, the traditional religion, obviously there's certain no's and yeses, but for, like I said, for a long time I didn't feel like I was like, I don't have the means of ever going to heaven because I live this way and because I choose to love someone this way. And I hope that people like really realize, whether people agree or disagree, right? I just recently spoke to a guy who grew up LDS, and it's very frowned upon to have tattoos. It's very frowned upon to have piercings, to drink, to have caffeine, be in same-sex marriages, to have sex before marriage, all those things. And it's funny because I said, growing up LDS, like you and I, like we really hit it off. I said, what would you say about somebody who is in a same-sex marriage? And he said, you have your free agency, and I thought that was like something that really hit me hard, was because I feel like no one should tell you that you do or do not have God's love, or that you can love God, or that you have a ticket to
Oh
heaven.
yeah, totally. I mean, like ultimately it's between you and God. It's a heart level issue. It's in your heart, if you are following Christ, if you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, like that's between you and God. Nobody else. I can't say to you like, oh, like for anything. I can't say like, oh, you hate ice cream. Like what? You're like, no, I love ice cream.
Yeah.
Like I can't say that to you. That is your belief, and then this is my belief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we can agree to disagree. I know that's a silly analogy, but ultimately that's the same thing. I think part of it is why we have different denominations, right? Like I have family and friends that I love dearly that are Catholic,
Yep.
but being a Catholic is not for me. I have some core beliefs that disagree with the Catholic Church. And so I'm no longer a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think finding a place where you do agree with and believe the same core beliefs
Mm-hmm.
is where you should be worshiping. And maybe you can't find a physical place or a church. That also doesn't mean that you're not a Christian, because there is no rule that says you have to go to church to go to heaven. Like
Right.
that's back to what I started with. Like there's no checkbox for you to say, oh, yep, went to church this Sunday. Okay, I'm going to heaven. Like it is solely a heart issue between you and God. And you just need to know that that is secure, and there's nothing that you could ever do to make God love you any less. And there's nothing that you can do to earn your way to heaven. And that's it. Is like anybody who's going to tell you otherwise probably has different beliefs than you. A few years back, my church did something that was like, we might all be from different backgrounds, but I hope we can all unite on the idea that we believe in the Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
There's God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And if you like believe that God is 3 in 1, like you're in the right place. And I was like, oh, I believe that. Okay, I'm in the right place.
Yeah. So. Right. Like it's much more, I don't want to say it's simple, right? But it kind of is, right? Like, I think I'm not going to misspeak to what he said. He genuinely was like, to your, like you were saying, like if you have a relationship with God and you believe that God loves you wholly for who you are, like it's at the end of the day, it's up to God where you go, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to live this superior life, right? And I think, like I said, there's a lot of misconceptions by way of people just really leaning into those things because they feel as though that they're not accepted, right? And I think they're really missing something incredible. I've seen, in my lifetime, I've seen, and people can choose to believe it or not, but I mean, if you go back and you look the movie I Can Only Imagine, like there's a reason that those movies exist, and I don't think it's a fallacy. Like I've seen personally God change people. It took some years, but I've personally seen God change people. And I feel like, I mean, there's times I just told him this story as well. Like it was right around the time where I was really apprehensive about religion. And I was deployed in 2017, 2018, and I just was real sour just about everything. Like I didn't really like where I was in life. I volunteered for a deployment figuring I'll figure myself out, right? This is an opportunity for me to be really selfish. And I remember one of my coworkers, they were always going to, like, I don't want to call it youth group, but group meetings that the chaplain would hold. And there was no particular religion. It was just talk about your day. Let's talk about how, Christ and God inserted themselves in your day. What are you praying for? Who are we praying for? And I remember we worked late one night and she said, do you want to go to the chow hall? And I thought, I don't know, like I just want to be by myself. And she was like, no, 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 come to the chow hall. Let's go to the chow hall. And you know, towards the end, she's like, hey, I don't mean to cut you off, but you know, we're gonna go to a group meeting with the chaplain. Would you want to come? And I was like, yeah, no, that's like not really for me. And later on, she had just said, hey, well, if you're always welcome if you want to come, you know. And she took a leap of faith, and I always saw her carrying around this book, and it was a devotion book. And she took a leap of faith and bought one off Amazon for me to Kuwait. And I remember she had put it in a box and it was waiting outside my door. And inside the devotion book, it says, "For when you're ready, Mara." And to be honest, I was like, this is like this is a sign that like I want to just try to lean in, right? And I ended up carrying that book around with me everywhere. Like I'd read the same devotion over and over and over again. And then I have my small little military Bible and read the passages that were associated with the devotion book. And then I started telling my sister about it. My sister got the book. And then my sister told her best friend, she got the book. And now the book just sits next to my nightstand. And, you know, it's like one of my routines that, and it just, you know, and I try to read it in the morning because I don't want my day to, I don't want to look back and be like, that's not how my day went, right? Like I want to live what I read, not go back and be upset that it didn't happen that way. But it really gave me like like I said, that sense of hope and idea that, you know, there's always like a right place, right time. And thankful to Mara that she did that for me because I was a very jaded and angry person for a long time. And here I am now, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's, I mean, that's a hard thing to do, like to know that someone's not ready and to still take that chance and, you know,
yeah,
not not like push something on you, but like gift you with something that's like, all right, you know, you could just end up throwing this away,
right.
you know, and so I've kind of done that in some situations similarly, um, and I've seen it not go as well as it did for you. I gifted a family member a book that I loved that was by a Christian author when they became a Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not Catholic, but I was trying to celebrate their decision.
Sure.
And then a year or two later, I get the book back. Like my brother gave me all these books. It was his wife. I feel like I'm putting them on blast right now, but I get these books back and I was like, I gave them that book. You know, like he was like, here, we're getting rid of some stuff. Here you go. I don't know if she ever read it, but I'm not gonna ask her.
Yeah.
I was like, it's a book that like I would never get rid of because I love it. And it was just
Right.
like it's present over perfect is I think a good way to live by, you know, to be present instead of being perfect. And that's the name of the book. But it just is one of those things where you're like, oh, okay. So I had the opposite happen.
To be honest, I feel like too, like some people are just a little bit more, and this isn't knocking, but some people are just a little bit more open to people's intentions, right? So like I knew her intention was genuine, and we were all embracing the suck together, right?
Yeah.
Like there
Yeah.
wasn't like life wasn't gonna get worse by me opening this book and leaning
Yeah.
in. You know what I mean? So I kind of looked at it in a way of like, you know, 4 or 5 years before that, I would have been really excited about that. I would have believed that that happened for a reason, that our interaction happened for a reason. And I was like, why can't I lean into that now? You know? Um, so I have one more question. If you have like a favorite moment, let's say for instance, because I feel like there's people that I've seen, right? Like where, like I told you about my former athlete who um she really struggled, and her friend was like, hey, come to this church, and she just really leaned in, and I watched her get baptized, and I watched multiple other people get baptized. That was like really moving for me, right? To see people really, like I said, embrace the opportunity to have like and live, I want to say like a new life, right? A clean life, a cleansed life. um So what would you say, is there like a favorite moment you have that like kind of really got you in your feels?
I got a couple. I got a couple actually. I was thinking of other ones, but now that you know, kind of said that. So when I was in college, I helped lead a retreat, not associated with um, Athletes in Action, but actually just the campus. So ministry at Dayton did some non-denominational retreats, which I thought was pretty cool. You know, they realized they're a Catholic school, but they were also reaching out to every student who was curious or wanted to learn more. So I went on this retreat and then I led it twice. But one of the times that I led it, I gave a talk on that retreat, and only 4 people really gave talks. And so I gave what was called the Storm Talk, which, as I'm sure you can tell from my testimony today, just what it was about and the things that I overcame to be sort of living my faith out as I am now. My life wasn't always that way. And
Right.
so I invited my FCA leaders, Dean and Di Schluter,
Mhm.
to come as guests for just the talk. So they would get like dinner, the talk, and then we had something called Safe Harbors. The retreat was called Lighthouse, so everything was like nautically themed.
Okay.
But like after the talk, then there were adults in the students who were running the retreat in our life who we had invited, and most people were from Ohio in Dayton.
Yeah.
And so it was like people on campus would come, or maybe somebody's like, you know, aunt or something, but like nobody came from far away. And so the Schluters showed up for me, drove from Illinois. I don't know if they drove back. We've never talked about it. I like need to ask them. Like, I don't know if they drove back that night. It would have been insane to drive back that night, but like also cheaper. Like, I don't know. And they listened to my talk, and they were safe harbors at the retreat. We had dinner with them, and then they were there for like maybe 3 hours tops,
Mhm.
and they drove 6 for the 3 hours for me. It was pretty awesome. So then I ended up getting to do the same thing. So they always invited alumni back,
Mhm.
and there was an FCA student from Jacobs who went to Dayton pretty much because I told him how awesome it was.
Yeah.
And then he went on this retreat, and then I got to come and surprise him. He had no idea, but I coordinated it with the leaders that
Yeah.
I came and surprised him that I was on the retreat. So
That's nice.
um so that was kind of special for me to have like this full circle moment of like getting it to happen to, they didn't surprise me. I knew they were coming, but like letting it happen to me and then being able to do it for somebody else was pretty special.
Yeah.
Um that was probably a big one. The other one would be when I was baptized, not as a baby, but as an adult,
Mhm.
knowing that my family wasn't going to be coming.
Mhm.
I had invited like my small group at the time, obviously, like they were very supportive, but I invited my avid boss. I had actually talked about her earlier, being the one who was like FCA to those kids.
Yeah.
I had invited her and another, actually my guidance counselor from high school that I was then working with. I
Okay.
invited them to come. Didn't you know? Said it in passing. Didn't think they'd come at all,
Mhm.
and uh, and she came. So and she's been like a big sister to me
Sure.
since I've started teaching. And so it's just that's still really special to me that she came for my baptism and was there. And the picture of me and her at that day is like one that I just really cherish for somebody who's like really showed up for me. So
Yeah. That's incredible, I think. I think those moments are under celebrated. Um, Mostly from the support aspect, you know. The people that show up on those days, you know that they're some real people, you know. Okay, so last thing I have is, if there's anything, I'm gonna kind of manipulate the question a little bit, is for people that maybe have been on the fence of like joining FCA or groups like FCA or AIA, and are apprehensive to, what advice would you have for them?
give it a try. Like try anything once. You know, I kind of live my life that way. Like I'll try anything once. I'll watch any movie once.
Mhm.
I'll try something once. You know, it might be a little scary or challenging, or and just see how it goes. I went skydiving once, and I'm only going to go once.
Yeah.
And I'm the adventurer. I like would love that, but you know, I didn't feel great on the way down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, things like that. Is it whatever it is? I try it. Bring a friend if you feel like you need to.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of my teammates who was older than me
Mhm.
tricked us when we were younger, and she got us to go to a Bible study, not because she didn't think that I would go, is
Mhm.
that she didn't want to get made fun of by our teammates, and so
Sure.
she was like, "Hey, you want to hang out on Wednesday?" And I was like, "Sure,
Yeah.
great, awesome." And she like asked a couple other freshmen who also were in Athletes in Action, but I did not see the correlation. I just thought this senior wants to hang out with me. This
Yeah.
is awesome.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, great. And then, like, right before we were supposed to meet up, she goes, oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, bring your Bible. And I was like, so she like tricked me into going with her to this Bible study that she wanted to go to, but didn't want to go to alone, but
Right.
also didn't want to tell me that that's where we were going. Cause I think I would have been like too excited and
Yeah.
been like, I'm going to Bible study with Ellie. Like, I just would have been like too
Kind
excited.
of, yeah, fly under the radar.
Yeah, she didn't want anybody else to know. And so so you can do that too. Like you
Yeah.
can
Yeah. I
you
mean,
can
my friends, when I was growing up, I mean, we grew up in the Lutheran church, but we went to church every Sunday, and we had Sunday school until you were a freshman, then you had youth group. And I mean, like Nikki Ramsey used to come to church with me all the time. Like, and I could list like a handful of friends. I'd be like, hey, so I can have a sleepover on Saturday night, but we're going
to
to
come with.
so you're either on the boat or you're off it. And none of my friends ever, that's what I do love is like my core group of friends. No one ever made fun of me for going to church. And I feel like my break in really truly leaning into faith was all me, right? Like I've been fortunate enough to never have somebody make fun of me because of what I believe in or what I practice. And I know that that's not always the case, but I think that just says you have to surround yourself with good people,
For
because that
sure.
somebody said to me the other day, when somebody does something bad to you or things that you don't like, things that sit with you wrong, you have to say, well, thanks for in your head, right? Thanks for showing me who you are, right? And then be done with it, and I've kind of lived my life like that now. And you are who you surround yourself with. So um, they might be like-minded by way, or they might not be like-minded by way of like your religion, but they absolutely support you in whatever you do. So it's a good community.
Yeah, yeah. People they'll be supportive. They'll show up. I mean,
Yeah,
people they'll surprise you for sure.
for
For
sure. Well, I appreciate you doing this, and it's been super awesome. I think um it's really good for like kids to know that, or just people in general to know that A, it's never too late, and B, that you being wholly you, whether you've had a dark past or maybe a superior past or whatever, right? That this is something that you can lean into no matter what point you are at your life. And even if we don't understand it, like you were saying, like the community is not Bible trivia. It's being a
yeah.
part of the community and coming together. So
Yeah, I just don't I'd say just don't make excuses for yourself.
yeah,
You know, I didn't get an opportunity to say this one, but I did want to add this. Like growing up, it was mandatory that I went to church. And so my mom was like, even if you are going to be late to warm-ups, you are going to church
yeah,
every single Sunday. And so I did, and I was late, and I told my coach, and like, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but if you're good enough, coach isn't going to sit you.
nope,
Like, and I never sat for it for being late to warm-ups. Like,
yep,
they threatened that for this, that, and the other thing, but like people also know that if this is a priority for you and you've shown that,
yep,
you know, this is who you are, that most people will embrace that. you know.
No, absolutely. I grew up the same way. Like growing up, I was not allowed. I mean, we were 9:15 churchgoers and practice started at 11 o'clock. Like, and I was either on the cusp of getting there or I was in my church clothes running and changing and practice, you know, but I had Jim Osnes was my coach
Oh,
and he was fantastic. He was like, you get here when you get here. But like you said, I was always putting in work, you know, and I had some athletes when I was coaching 14U that were like, Coach, I can't come because of church. And who am I? Like I said, the parents, who am I to say that you can't go to church, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I do expect you to do is in your off time to maximize what you missed, right? So, and that's on you, right? Like we all make choices, and church is a priority for you. That's fine. Church is a priority for a lot of people, but if softball also is a priority, you need to fit that into later day Sunday, right? I'm not asking you to manipulate your schedule, but yeah, it's good to have people like that in your corner, because then it makes you feel a little bit better. It makes you feel a lot better about being present when you're going, right? Not thinking about, oh
What am I
man.
missing? Like, how long is this guy going to talk for so that I can get out of here on time? Yeah, all that.
I mean, authenticity is real, right? Like I think, and you and I both know, like, you know, kind of growing up in a strong softball community is that like if you were overall a good athlete and a good student and you went up to your coach and said, hey, I'm not going to miss practice because of X, and you showed out while you were there and you did exactly what you were supposed to do and your coach knew you were doing stuff in the off time, no one ever questioned why you weren't there, you know. So yeah, I think you're right. Making excuses is, if it's something you really want to do, you put your best foot forward into doing it, you know. So well, I appreciate it. And it's been super awesome.
Yeah,
I
anytime. This was fun.
yeah, I hope that, you know, I see so many kids getting involved in this type of community. There's actually out here in Park City, there's it's called Young Life.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I one of the athletes I have on my high school team, her dad runs that and kids flock to it and it's good for
Great.
kids to have a purpose, you know. So well,
Yeah.
thanks. I appreciate it.